Welcome to Garden Views, interesting conversations with interesting people who have done and or are doing interesting things. So sit back and enjoy. Welcome everyone into Garden of Doom, and this episode we are welcoming in Jim Marshall, and he is an author, and I'll describe best what he is, but I'll just go from about the author from his book. He's a polymathic scholar and autodidact who has devoted over 50,000 hours of study and practice of multiple dimensions of human development. He received a classical education as an honor student at a Jesuit Military Prep School. He was accepted into engineering school while still a junior at that prep school and attended college on academic scholarship. He graduated college with a Bachelor of Science, cum laude, while still an undergraduate, and began to study alternative arts and science, which today would be described as transformational and holistic. He became a professional practitioner, and after 28 years of formal education, had a long career as a human development engineer. He's integrated the best aspects of the most advanced techniques on the planet and expanded their limits by his own research and discovery. He successfully treated and trained hundreds of clients over a 40-year career, and he's the inventor of something called Septemics, I hope I pronounced that correctly, which is one of several consciousness-expanding systems, including multi-dimensional processing, conflict matrix processing, and the Tripartite Path to human development. His areas of expertise include psychology, philosophy, theology, parapsychology, science, engineering, mathematics, law, literature, history, metaphysics, military science, physical culture, and music. So there we go. We've got a whole lot of stuff. He's a New York guy, went to a whole bunch of New York schools, and we'll get into all that. But Jim Marshall, thank you so much for coming on the show. How are you doing this evening?
Hi, Jeff.
How are you?
I'm fine.
Good. I don't know if you want to elaborate on any more of that. I assume you wrote the about the author section, but there may be parts that you want to elaborate on there or correct.
Well, let me just say one sentence which will introduce myself to your clients in a relevant way. I am the discoverer of hitherto unknown natural phenomena which greatly aid in the understanding of people, from which I constructed a revolutionary practical philosophic system called Septemics, and published it in the book Septemics, Hierarchies of Human Phenomena.
I think that's great. Before we go further, there were a couple of words in there that I've heard a lot, and of course I know everything, but let's pretend that everyone in the audience doesn't know everything. So I hear the word polymath a lot, and autodidact. What do those words mean?
Well, a polymath is someone who's learned in a variety of disparate subjects, which you just described in my bio.
Okay.
An autodidact is someone who teaches himself. I have had the ability for most of my life to teach myself pretty much anything to a graduate degree, meaning to a level of a graduate understanding. Because by the time I had my bachelor's degree, I knew very well how to learn. And I used that throughout my life, and I'm still using it.
So first of all, thank you for that. I appreciate that. So I read parts of your book, and I read the prologue and the introduction and some things like that. And it was very interesting. We were talking a little bit pre-production, how I've been, for a while, certain numbers repeat themselves, and you try to get to the bottom of what that is. And, if you're a religious person, of course, it has to do with numbers in the Bible or particular scriptures or writings. If you're a Kabbalist, there's probably gematria involved, or other disciplines have other forms of numerology. You might just think it has to do with phases of the moon, or the measurement of movement, which is what we call time. And seven is something that I've noticed time and time again. And me, I thought I had, it figured out, lucky seven. Where's lucky seven come from? Why is seven the number of God? Is it just because that's the phases of the moon and that's a week and that's the easiest way to measure time for people? Why is the seven sisters everywhere, especially since humans haven't been able to see the seventh star in the eye of Taurus, for something like 100,000 years. So and I guess you saw some things like that too: the seventh seal, the seven signs, the 70 witnesses, seven horns, seven crowns, seven-headed dragons, the whole thing. Seven comes up a lot. I'm sure I'm missing about a million things in there as well. And it seems like your studies into seven led you to believe or to discover that seven is something that's built into, well, this is probably not exactly right, our DNA, that it's something to do with the human psyche. So, first of all, I'm sure I oversimplified it. And if you can sort of, talk about some of your explorations into seven and what got you started on this path and then where it took you, that'd be wonderful.
Okay. First of all, let me say there's a section in the introduction, which, by the way, is the longest section of the book, entitled Why 7? And I explain with specificity why 7. It's a mathematical explanation, but anybody can understand it. But rather than going into that, because anybody can go on my website and read it for free, let me tell you what Septemics is.
Okay.
Septemics is a philosophical science based on the fact that many phenomena related to humans occur in a sequence of 7 levels. Literally, the word septemics means all pertaining to 7. Septemics comprises a collection of scales or sequences, each of which breaks down various human phenomena into a hierarchy of 7 steps. There are 35 such scales, each of which is unique, and combined, they span the spectrum of human experience, by which I mean any problem, situation, or dilemma that arises in the life of any human being can successfully be analyzed for success or toward success by one of these 35 scales, usually more than one. Each one of these scales is a roadmap for success in the corresponding area. And you sort of asked me about how I figured this out, so let me explain that. I'll make it as brief as possible, but it is kind of a complicated answer, although I can simplify it. So the story begins when I was 16, and I was accepted into an elite engineering school, which I attended on academic scholarship. Now, of course, at that time, I thought I was going to be engineering physical things like electrons or airfoils or motors or gears or whatever. But by the time I had my bachelor's degree, I realized what I wanted to engineer was the human psyche, because that is the area of greatest unknown, and correspondingly, it is the area in which we are failing miserably. 95% of the problems in industrialized society are because people do not understand people. We're not starving to death or dying of plagues or anything like people used to. Our problems are not understanding people, not understanding your wife, not understanding your son, not understanding somebody who's running for president, not understanding the boss, and so forth. And this book completely solves that issue across 35 axes. You have to realize there are 35 scales, each of which has 7 levels. And there's a top and a bottom. So each of this is a roadmap for success in that area. Now, what I'd like to do now, if I may, is just tell you the names of the 35 scales so you know exactly what subject matter is addressed.
Sure.
And if I do that, you'll see that I have covered human phenomena. Okay? So the individual scales, meaning they apply more to individuals than to groups, are the scale of basic purposes, the scale of personal influence, the scale of choice, the scale of permeation, the scale of thought, the scale of identity, the scale of evaluation, the scale of motivation, the scale of control, the scale of stopping, the scale of scholarship, the scale of literacy, the scale of humility, the scale of memory, the scale of spiritual identity, the scale of mental deletion, the scale of aberration, the scale of physical fitness, the scale of justification, the scale of belief, the scale of equanimity, the scale of attack, the scale of conflict, and the scale of reaction. And the group scales are the scale of relationships, the scale of life spheres, the scale of government, the scale of civilization, the scale of survival, the scale of management, the scale of exchange, the scale of communication, the scale of allegiance, the scale of sexuality, and the scale of politics. Any one of these scales by itself can dramatically improve the life of the reader. So let me tell you why this is of value. I wrote this book to help people. I've had a lifetime of helping people. Each of these scales provides the user with an infallible way of determining salutariness or beneficialness of any group, individual, or activity. If the group, individual, or activity moves persons up these scales, it's beneficial or positive. If it moves them down, it's detrimental or negative. More importantly, just finding out what level you or another person is at on any scale is by itself enlightening and beneficial. And finally, once you know the actual level of any person on any scale, you can improve that person by moving them up one level at a time. All of these advantages represent major steps forward for society. Combined, they empower one to understand, predict, and manage human affairs to a degree hitherto unattainable by most.
So this is almost like you've created a way for people to be their own computer, sort of?
Well, I've created a way for people to understand human phenomena, meaning each one of these scales is a lens. And when you hold this lens up to the corresponding area, you get 7 rays, you get 7 manifestations that go from top to bottom. And this is extremely enlightening. And I'll give you some examples later.
Okay.
But let me tell you how I found this. Okay, so I had a long career as a human development engineer, using engineering principles and biofeedback to help my clients to become more able, more ethical, more intelligent, more successful, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I started to notice, just incidentally, that my clients were improving in ways that were predictable to me. Now, I never told this to anyone, but I made notes. And as the decades rolled by, I came to realize that a client would be at a specific level on a specific scale, and that as a result of the session, he would go from the level he was at to the higher level. And this happened thousands and thousands of times. So I just kept making notes. Now, by 1995, a couple of things happened. For one thing, I had about 32 scales, varying in length between 3 and 7, all of which I had observed as being actual empirical phenomena that occur without the people knowing it. So it's like the Fibonacci sequence. Okay? There are many creatures that construct themselves according to the Fibonacci numbers. They don't know anything about numbers or Fibonacci, but they still do it. That is how these scales are. Every human being is at some level on every scale. Now, in 95, I had one scale in particular that I had been using for many decades on a daily basis. And by then, I absolutely knew from many decades of direct experience with people that it was correct. However, in 95, I realized this 6-level scale actually had a 7th level. And when I inserted that 7th level into the 6th-level scale, it manifested mathematically. Now, you have to realize I took 26 semesters of math, and I think in math. So I know what it is and how it works in the way that a mathematician would. And when I saw this, I realized whatever this is, it has to be natural law. Because anything that has mathematics embedded in it is natural law. So when this manifested mathematically, all of these implications jumped out at me. In other words, it went from being a scale to being a whole body of data. Now, I then asked myself, I wonder how many of my other scales, these other scales that I had, the varying ones, were actually 7-level scales that had not been developed all the way because I wasn't developing anything. I was just helping my clients and making notes. So, knowing what I was looking for, I inspected these other scales, and because I knew what I was looking for, they all went to 7 levels pretty easily. And as each one went to 7 levels, it manifested mathematically. So by then I knew I had discovered a new subject. You have to realize there's no theory of septemics. This just happened in front of me. And because of my polymathic qualifications, I was able to see it for what it was. So then I thought, wait a minute, I can go from helping people by the hundreds, which is what I have been doing as a human development engineer, to helping them by the millions if I put this data in a book and get it out to the people. So I have to put this in a book. So the first version of the book was completed in December of 95. And what I did is I sent it out to colleagues of mine, all of whom had master's degrees, let me correct that, had graduate degrees of various kinds in a variety of subjects. And the feedback I got was uniformly positive. They loved it. Now, they all had different comments, but they all had very positive comments. These were people I knew were intelligent and well-educated and would be honest with me. That's why I sent it to them. So then this verified what I had surmised, which is that I had discovered a new subject that would be of great benefit to anybody who reads the book. So I then spent the next 25 years developing this. So you have to realize, first I had to discover the phenomena, which was largely done, as I just explained, by 95. Although I did find 3 more scales as I was writing the book. Then I had to take this data and I had to use it to craft a workable philosophic system. Now you have to realize, as an engineer, I'm only interested in facts and results. I'm not impressed by opinions or beliefs. To me, as an engineer, they're irrelevant. It doesn't matter whether you think the acceleration of gravity at the surface of Earth is 32 feet per second a second. It is. It's been verified many thousands of times, okay? And your opinion about it is irrelevant. That's what it is, like the Pythagorean theorem. It doesn't matter whether you accept it or not. It's true.
Right.
And that is what these scales are like. I absolutely know from having spent 25 years working on this, if the scales are correct. Now, this takes us to the next issue is, I had to present this in a way that would make sense to the average reader. Right from the beginning, my intent was to present this as a way for the average person to help himself, to lift himself up by his bootstraps by using this data. So that was a lot of work. The book was rewritten many times, and each time it was, I sent it out to students and friends and colleagues and associates and got feedback, and I kept improving it.
Right.
So, for example, I wound up including glossaries. Not only is there a glossary in front of every chapter, there's even a glossary in front of the introduction. So I'm telling you the definitions of the words that I'm using, especially the words used in the scales themselves. So this makes it very user-friendly. There's no ambiguity here. Okay, as an engineer, I was determined to release something that would actually work for anyone who wanted to improve himself or others, assuming he could read English. So after 25 years, I said, I'm not going to live forever. I'm going to release this now. That was more than 2 years ago. So I've been getting results on this for 27 years. And I know that I succeeded in presenting this in a way that makes sense to the average person because I've seen the results. You don't have to be a college graduate to understand this. I made sure I presented it in a way that was clear to people. They have to understand. I started school at the age of 3, and I have been engaged in education one way or another my entire life to this very day. So I have a lot of understanding about how to present things to people, how to get people to understand things. Because I had a lot of success working with clients. And, like a person would come to me having trouble with, for example, algebra. A person never knows what he doesn't understand. If he knew that, he wouldn't be having trouble with it.
Right.
So I would have to figure out, in a kind of reverse engineering, what it is that the guy doesn't understand, and then express it to him in a way that he would get. And I have been doing this my entire adult life. So I was able to sort of present this in a way that anybody can get. Now, I designed these scales intentionally to wrap around the reader. In other words, the way you experience this is when you read the book. It's like putting on eyeglasses and looking in a mirror. It's not hard to get. It's not obscure. This is something that people get because it's natural phenomena. When they look at it, they say, yeah. Now, a lot of people have asked me, what book is your book like? And I have to tell them in all honesty, having gone to school for 28 years, I don't think there's ever been a book like this before. But I can say that each of these 35 scales, which are presented in a table or a spreadsheet, compared to the periodic table of elements. Now, before Dmitri Mendeleev invented the periodic table, there was chemistry, but he revolutionized it by making it easier to understand, easier to teach, and easier to learn. And so that table, although it's been amplified as we discovered more elements, it's in every physical science book. Every scientist in the world uses it in whatever language he speaks. Okay? That is what these scales are like. So, for example, I said there's a scale of equanimity. This scale is like the periodic table for equanimity. It gives you the 7 rays, the 7 manifestations of equanimity in the order in which they occur from lowest to highest. So basically the way this works is you look at the scale and you find your level. You ask yourself, what level am I at? Okay? And if you read the glossary and study the scale, and especially if you read the chapter, it won't be hard. Usually what happens, in a matter of seconds, the person will find a bracket. Like you could show the scale to somebody who doesn't know anything about this. Take a look at this scale of relationships, for example, right? So, there's a scale of relationships, and I look at it, and then you can say, where is your relationship? Like his marriage or his girlfriend or whatever. Where is this relationship on this? And what will happen in maybe 20 seconds, 25 seconds, is he will find a bracket. He'll say, well, I'm not sure, but I can see that it's either 3, 4, or 5, for example. And you say, okay, so let's have you read the chapter, see if you can narrow that down. Now, when he reads the chapter, he's going to be interested in it because he's already kind of found himself on this a little bit. So when everything, I say, okay, now that you read it, where is your relationship on this? And he'll probably say, well, I can see now that I read this, that our relationship is at level 4. That's not so great. It's down quite a bit from the top. No wonder we're having trouble. See, he will have guaranteed a realization when he finds his level. Now, you can also use this for others. You can figure out what is your girlfriend's level on the scale of motivation? What is your father's level on the scale of reaction? You see? And you could find the level of any person on all 35 scales. Now, by the time you do that, you'll have a deeper understanding of this person than he has of himself. Now, I want to add I caution everybody, never tell anyone the level of a living human being on any scale. I advise you against telling others what level you're at, and I advise you against telling other people what level they're at. It's counterproductive. People don't want to be told that. People are always being told by the wife or the husband or the boss what's wrong with them or what they're like. You know, like when the wife says, "Oh, you're just like your father." He doesn't want to hear that. But if you get him to look at the book, if he can read English reasonably well, he'll figure it out himself. And when he does, he will have an epiphany. He'll say, "Oh, I see what's going on here," in whatever of the 35 areas there are. Now, the other thing I have to tell you that's highly relevant is that some of these are general scales and some of these are specific scales. Mm-hmm. Now, let me tell you what I mean by that. In general scale, once you find your level or another person's level, you're done. That's it. You have identified that person on that scale. It's general information. Okay? There's no more to do with that. You might try to move up a level or help another person move up a level, but that's really about it. However, on specific scales, you can use a scale in dozens or hundreds of ways. For example, there's a scale of motivation. Now, what could be more important than knowing someone's motivation? So let's say you have a guy who's going out with a girl, and they're talking about getting married, right? Wouldn't it be smart for him to know what her motivation is? Does she want to marry him because she loves him, which is level 1, the highest motivation? Or does she want to marry him because he drives a Maserati, he owns a yacht, and he flies his own jet? See, that's a different motivation. He might not want to marry somebody like that. That person's a gold digger. That might be the difference for this guy between ending the relationship and getting married, depending on what he determines. You see?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Now, for another guy, that might be okay. Now, there are a lot of older, on a track with a lot of money who are a woman who's a gold digger, right? The guy's got $10 million in the bank, so he buys her a diamond ring, a pearl necklace, a mink coat, a Corvette, and gives her a credit card. She's delighted. He's delighted because he's married to a 25-year-old woman. So, see, for him, that might work. You see? Mm-hmm. For this other guy, it might not work. So this is all for you to figure out your life. And every time you find a level, it's a realization, whether it's your level on any scale or another person's level. So when you find your motivation, for example, toward your boss, you go, okay, I see. There's a little realization there. And then when you find your motivation toward your next door neighbor, could be a different one. And then you might say, okay, I see what's going on between us. See? So there's always a realization. And the key word here is insight. Now, using these skills requires some insight because you have to observe the person and listen to what he says. And if you do, the person will tell you his level.
What if you're not realistic about yourself?
And the next thing is, it develops insight. Well, we're going to put it this way. People who are interested in improving themselves are looking for truth. Right? Let's say a guy has some problem, whatever it is. He's overweight. He's a drunk. He can't keep a job, whatever it is. Right? If he's motivated to improve himself, he's looking. Okay? And this is not that hard to figure out. Now, there are people who are not motivated to improve themselves. Psychopaths, sociopaths, war criminals, serial murderers, corrupt people. There's a lot of categories of people. They have no interest in improving themselves, and they certainly have no interest in improving anybody else. So that person is not going to be realistic about himself. But that's why I say this book is for anyone who reads reasonably well and wants to improve himself or his life. If that describes you, this book is for you.
Okay. So
and the more you use it, the more you'll benefit, the more insight you will develop.
was it the fact
Did you want
that
to say something?
yeah, well, was it that you kept running into sevens that led you to the 7 levels into the 35, or was it that you found that 7 repeated itself so much that you divided it into 7s? In other words, which was the chicken, which was the egg, which came first?
Okay. Right. I didn't divide anything. Okay. I simply observed this because I worked with hundreds of clients of every description for many decades, okay, and helped them to resolve their issues. And as I was doing this, as I said earlier, I observed that they'd be at a certain level that I already knew, although I kept it to myself, and they would be going to the next level up, which I already knew. Of course, this only made me better at what I did. I knew the outcome of the session. And as the years went by, this was just more and more. So I would pick up the person at the level he was at, on the axis that was relevant to him, and I would move him up by asking the right question, by listening, by guiding him into a realization, into an insight. Now, as I said, I had that realization in 95 that this one particular scale, actually it was 7 levels, and that when I saw that, it manifested mathematically. So that motivated me to look at the other scales, as I said earlier. And as I looked at them with this question in my mind, are these really 7-level scales? And they all went 7-level scales. So it was all empirical data. It was all in front of me. It's just like figuring out the difference between a tulip and a rose. Now to a 5-year-old, there's not much difference between a tulip and a rose. They're both pretty. But to a botanist, there's a big difference. Yeah. A tulip grows from a bulb. A rose grows on a bush. Actually, a rose has more in common genetically with an apple than with a tulip. The rose and the tulip are very different, whereas the rose and the apple are in the same family. So this is exactly the type of data that you get from these. You look at it and you say, okay, where is this guy in the scale of human ability, for example? And you spot him. And when you do, when you get it right, it's always a realization. There's like a sense of relief. Oh, okay, I see who this guy is.
So your boss is a tulip, and you're more of a rose.
You know with specificity what I'm talking.
I'm sorry. I think we have a little delay, but so it turns out that you're a rose and your boss is a tulip, and you understand this from the book. So this will help you to more successfully interface with your boss.
Yes. The truth about this is, no matter what you find, whether it's good news or bad news, you're always going to be happy with it. You're always going to have a realization, and it's always going to empower you. So, for example, the scale of basic purposes. Okay, level 6 is what I call the criminal. This person's basic purpose is pleasure. He really doesn't have a conscience. He doesn't particularly want to kill you, but he will if you get in his way.
Right.
Okay? These are like professional criminals at this level. So, if you spot somebody, and there are many ways to spot somebody, if you listen to what he says and look at what he does, you say, whoa, this is a dangerous person. You see? So you stay away from him. Now, this happens to me all the time now. Anytime I interact with people, without even thinking about it, I can spot these on these scales. For example, I could talk to some guy for 5 or 10 minutes and spot him on the scale of literacy. That tells me a lot about how I should interact with him. So, for example, if I were talking to Jordan Peterson, he's clearly very high on the scale of literacy. I'm not going to give a level. I'm just going to say that's no secret to anybody who pays attention to the star, right? Whereas if I talk to the guy who cleans my house, he's definitely not at the same level. So this informs me about how to communicate with this person. I had clients come to me from Europe whose first language was not English. So knowing this data, I was able to deal with them successfully because I modified how I communicated with them. I didn't use words like quotidian or antediluvian. Okay, I was very careful to make sure they understood what I was saying, and I used simple words. I didn't say this is a colossal problem. I say this is a big problem. Okay, so that is just one example of how you could use this to help yourself. But if you take the general idea I gave you and blow it up in a billion directions, you get what this book is about. The applicability of it far exceeds the lifetime of a human being. In other words, there's no point at which you found it all or you used it all up. Because every time you meet somebody new, you can spot the guy. You can look at this guy and say, oh, this guy's at level 5 on the scale of physical fitness. That tells you something about him, about what to expect from him. You're not going to say to that guy, come on, I'm going to go jog 5 miles, come with me. Because you know he can't do it because he's at level 5. You see? If he were at level 3, then you could say, okay, I'm going to run 5 miles, come with me. So it tells you what to expect from people. And it tells you what they're going to do before they do it. So, for example, when Obama came on the scene, most Americans had no idea who he was. He had only been in the Senate 2 years. And so here's this guy, fairly unknown with a peculiar name, running for president. So I said, well, I need to find out about this guy. So I spent some time listening to what he had to say, observing him, and I was able to spot, after some cogitation, his basic purpose. And the basic purpose is what the person is trying to do, whether he's successful or not. So that informed me as to whether I wanted to vote for him or not. Now, I happen to know the basic purpose of every president of the United States, going back as far as Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and many of the presidents after that who I studied, such as Washington and Lincoln and Jefferson. Now, I'm not going to give that information, but you can figure it out yourself by getting the book and studying these people. You know, we have hundreds and hundreds of books on George Washington.
Right.
We have many letters written by many of his contemporaries. It's not hard to figure out who this person was. So if you study him, as I did, I spotted him. Okay, this guy, and I give it in the book because he's deceased. So, as in terms of explaining to people, giving them actual examples. Okay, so Washington was at level 3 on the scale of basic purposes. This is not an opinion. It's like the difference between a rose and a tulip. If you look at a tulip and say it's a rose, you're wrong.
Right. So this is like almost like this is like a roadmap to yourself, but also to others.
Yes.
And you could use it.
Each of these 35 skills gives you. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was going to say, and you can use it in, you know, for self-development. You could use it for professional development. You can use it for predictive, I guess, for industries, industry leaders. If you can, I don't know, let's say if I don't even remember her name. It probably doesn't matter. I think it was Elizabeth Holmes, the woman who's, you know, gone to prison for scamming in the California company. Anyway, if you listened to her and read her and applied the scales to her, maybe you know that while she, on some level, meant to do well, that she never had the ability, or maybe you could tell that she never even meant to do well, that she was just, as you put it, maybe in criminal level, and then you would have not invested in that company.
Well, you could analyze her across 35 axes, and by the time you were done, you would know very much who this person is. If this is a person you can trust, if this is a person you want around you. So it gives you the good and the bad. You can look at a person and say, wow, this is an upscale person. They're high on this scale, they're high on this scale, they're high on this scale. This is somebody I want around me, okay? So when I find somebody like that, I go out of my way to keep them around me because they're going to be of benefit. And at the same time, you could look at somebody and you can say, well, he's He's at or near the bottom of many scales. This is a dangerous person. This person is going to be a liability. So it tells you who you want around you and who you don't. And as I said, don't tell anybody, okay? Keep it to yourself. Now, I've actually had a couple of people say, well, tell me where I am on a certain scale. I say, no, that's not what this is about. If you want to find out, get the book. It's available hardbound, softbound, and ebook. An ebook is cheap. For $10, you can get this and change your whole life. So get the book and study it yourself. I'm not here to tell anybody where anybody is on any scale, unless it's a deceased person.
Well, let's do that then. Can you give us a practical application with somebody who's long deceased and nobody will get offended or whatever? Like, I don't know. Well, you could probably pick one, but like, say, Napoleonish, something like that somebody would know.
Okay. Napoleon is one of the people I name as an example in the chapter on basic purposes, because he's a well-known person. Right. But let me give you something else that is more illustrative. Most Americans, in fact, even many non-Americans, are aware that Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton, two of the founding fathers, were at odds all along for many years. It isn't so much that Hamilton hated Jefferson, but Jefferson despised Hamilton. Now, what I can tell you is Hamilton was at level 2 on the scale of basic purposes. He was what I call a leader. This is a very different type of person from level 3, which is what I call a winner. The goal of the winner is wealth. Now, wealth doesn't just mean money. It can mean many things. I mean, if you're a professional baseball player, getting that World Series ring, showing that you won a World Series that you can wear for the rest of your life, that's wealth. Or if you're an actor, it's an Emmy or an Oscar that goes on your mantelpiece. See, that's a type of wealth. So wealth can mean many things. Hamilton was not ever interested in feathering his nest. He was a leader. He was interested in doing what was best to establish and stabilize the United States. And most leaders have terrible things happen to them. Abraham Lincoln was a leader. He was assassinated. Hamilton was murdered by Aaron Burr, who's one of the most evil people in American history. That happens to leaders, okay? Because the leader is out for the struggle. He's not there to protect himself. He's not there to make money. He's there to conquer. Now, you might say, well, conquest is not a good thing. Well, that's a question of whose ox is being gored.
Right.
When the Allies conquered the Axis powers in 1945, that was a good conquest. Even for the people in Japan and Germany and Italy, it was a good conquest. They did very well after that. So, similarly with Lincoln as a leader conquering the Confederacy, he was determined to conquer the Confederacy. He had a terrible time getting anybody on board with that. But he persisted, and eventually he found an obscure general named Grant who was willing to fight, and Grant's friend, Sherman, okay? And those two men made it possible to defeat the Confederacy. So Lincoln did not have an easy life and ended up the way many leaders end up. Now, Jefferson, if you study him, which I did, he was a winner. He won and won and won and won. I mean, he won as a lawyer. He won as an architect. He won as a landowner. He won in many contexts. Okay? But, when the British finally showed up at Monticello, which was far inland, he ran away. He didn't fight them. Hamilton was actually the leader of one of the two groups that defeated the British at Norfolk. So Hamilton was fearless. Okay, he had spectacular ability, and Jefferson did not understand him, did not like him, did not want him around. So if you study these two men, which I have, you'll see that they fit these patterns very clearly. It's not subtle.
Okay. I think we're making an editorial switch here. So folks,
let me give you an example of how to use this.
So just one sec. I think this is going to end up on Garden Views, not Garden of Doom. It seems more like a Garden View show than Garden of Doom. For the guests, that probably makes no difference. For the audience, though, who hopefully listen to both shows, they understand the difference.
Okay. So let me give you something specific that your people will be able to really understand how this works and why this works. Let's say you have a buddy who's having a romance problem, right? And you're concerned because he's having a terrible time. You say, Joe, come over here. Let me show you something. Right? So you open up the book to the scale of relationships. You say, Joe, read this glossary. He reads it. It's not that long. Then say, now look at this scale. Now, since he's having relationship problems, and he just read the glossary, he's going to know what all these words mean. He's going to be very interested in this. He's going to look at this, and he's going to, whether you say so or not, he's going to put himself into this context because he's already there. So you say to him, where is this relationship that's troubling you? Where is it on this scale, right? And most of the time, you will find a bracket. He'll say, well, off the top of my head, I'd say it's either 3 or 4. And you say, okay, let's have you read the text so you know what this is really about. And then maybe you can spot it exactly. So he's going to want to read this because it's not that long. He's interested because he just found something. So he reads it. And when he's done, you say, okay, now look at it again. Where are you? And then he'll say something like, well, I can see now that I've read this and I'm at level, this relationship is at level 4. That's not so great. No wonder we have trouble. See, he has a realization.
Right.
You don't have to find something at the top to be happy about it, because whatever you find is the truth, and you have insight into it. So then you can say, okay, let's see if we can help you to move this up from level 4 to level 3, and then you'll have a better relationship. Right? Then you can say, now take a look at the scale of sexuality. So he looks at the scale of sexuality, and again, because he's having some trouble in this, he's going to be interested. Look at this. Where are you on this scale? Okay? And again, you'll probably find a bracket in a matter of seconds. Now what that means is, let's say he says, well, I can't figure out if I'm at 3, 4, or 5. Well, you see, he already threw out 4 levels. That's progress.
Right.
That happens very easily. Then you say, okay, read the chapter. Okay, so you can get this and really help yourself. So he's going to want to read it because he's already into it. He reads the chapter. Then you might help him with that. You might say, well, what does that word mean? Look at the glossary. He might have some difficulty, and you can help him with it, kind of as a tutor. And then after he gets through, he goes back and say, okay, now tell me, where are you on this scale? Okay? And he'll probably be able to find the level. Now, he may not tell you because he might not want to tell you, which is fine. The idea is not for him to tell you. The idea is for him to figure it out for himself. All right? But since you are helping him, he might just go ahead and tell you. But you don't ask him. You say, you figure it out. So he'll say, oh, I'm having a big realization here. I can see what level I'm at, and this explains a lot. See, even if he hasn't told you, he is now analyzing this problem. Then you can say to him, let's have you look at the scale of allegiance, because anytime a relationship deteriorates, it's always because allegiance deteriorates. So let's say he's going out with this woman for some time, right? She cheats on him. She goes out with some other guy, right? That would cause a big situation.
You'd think.
Well, that is clearly a lessening of allegiance, right? Mm-hmm. She went down that scale. So you see this all the time in divorces. When the couple says, I do, they're pledging allegiance to one another. But then you come back 5 years later, they're ready to kill one another. One or both of them has gone down the scale. And if your friend can spot where he is, that will help him. It will clarify his mind. Okay, I can see I've gone down to level 3. And then you can say, well, where is Mary Jane? And he'll think about it, right? What are her behaviors? What does she have to say? What has she done? And he can look and say, whoa, she's down at level 4. No wonder we're having a lot of trouble. You see? So he's having real. Then you can say, let's look at the scale of permeation. Permeation is the basic action of a spiritual being. When two people love one another, it's because they're permeating one another. So he can look at this, and you can say, where are you on the scale? And he might look at it and say, well, I can see I'm kind of near the bottom. That's not so good. No wonder I'm having trouble. And then you can say, well, what about Mary Jane? Where is she on the scale, And wherever she is, when he spots it, he will feel better about it. So by the time you've done this, I can keep going with this.
Yeah, I have a question for you, though. A lot of this is based on the person that you're interfacing with, the person you're having a conversation with, being willing to read a book. And a lot of people aren't willing to, or they'll say they will, or they don't even want to have the conversation, or maybe you're not comfortable having that conversation with another person. How can you you have to have sort of the salesman's knack of being able to overcome obstacles.
Well, the scenario that I just gave you about you helping your friend Joe, you didn't ask him to read a book. You just opened it to the scale and said, look at the scale. And when he looks at it, he says, oh, you mean there's a scale of relationships? And you can see, yeah, where is this relationship? See, and he's going to want to know that. He hasn't read the book yet, but I gave you 4 scales that might be relevant. And I can keep doing this. I can give you another 5.
Right.
Because in a complicated situation like that, there are going to be many scales that are relevant. So at that point, he might say, well, this is really interesting stuff. I think I'm going to read this.
So you've got to sort of carry the book around with you.
Most people don't read books.
So you have to carry the book with you, or when you.
But if a situation arises,
mm-hmm. You have it with you when you've arranged to have this conversation.
Well, look, this is not something that's going to happen when you're waiting for the bus.
Right.
You have this friend Joe. You've known him for 10 years. He's your friend, right? And you're thinking about him. I feel sorry for Joe. Looks like he's going to break up with Mary Jane. Let me see if I can help him. You haven't asked him to read a book. You just asked him to look at a scale. Now, by the time he looks at 4 scales, especially if he reads the chapter, which is not that long, he's going to say, this is really clarifying this for me. And you can say to him, well, maybe you should read the whole book. You can get an e-book for $10. So you're going to, even if he's not a person who necessarily reads books, he might be interested enough to do it. That's the way to get somebody into this. Not to say, oh, I read this book and you should read it. That doesn't work. And I explained that in the chapter, how to help people with this. Now, of course, of the people who do read books, most of them read fiction books. And of the people who read nonfiction books, which is what this is, most of them are in a niche, meaning mathematicians read mathematics books, right. Psychologists read psychology books, historians read history books, right? This book is not in any of those niches. Trust me, I've been working on this for 27 years. This is not in any pre-existing niche. But all of those niches are in this book. So in other words, whatever niche the person is in, the book is going to help him. Now, can you get him to read it? Well, if he's a mathematician and he reads math books, he might say, is it a math book? No. Well, I'm not going to read it. Well, that's his problem. But if you talk to somebody, like, for example, let's say you buy this book, you read it, it helps you. And I don't know if you're married or not, but you might say to your wife, honey, I read this book really helped me. It really helped me to figure out what the problem is with Fred. I saw that he's at this certain level on a certain scale. Now I understand him, so I know what to do. So that's really the way to get people interested in it. Of course, you have to realize that if a person refuses to read the book, well, that's his problem. That's just like, there are people who, say you have a friend who's 75 pounds overweight, you might give him a gym membership. That doesn't mean he's going to use it.
Right.
He might not use it. But he might say, well, now that you mention it, this is a good idea. I should take some of this weight off. So maybe he will. But, it's not your responsibility to fix other people. That's why this is about helping yourself. Use it to help yourself. If you use it to help yourself and you talk to other people about it, they'll say, you mean you figured out that you resolved this problem you have with Fred by using this book? You say, yeah, I found him on these scales. That told me exactly what he's like, what he believes, how he works, what's about him. And so I now know what he's going to do. I know what he's going to say before he does it. And so therefore, this really helps me. And I'll tell you something. The more you use this book, the more insightful you will become. Because every time you find anyone on any level, whether it's you or another, it's an insight. So you are more insightful. So because you're more insightful, your ability to use the book improves.
Let me ask some Machiavellian questions.
You're a little... Yeah.
So this book, it would seem, would be very useful to political parties or campaigns. It might be useful to law enforcement trying to do profiles, to try and figure out who, criminals are or what they're going to do next. I mean, you could use it in lots of ways. I mean, marriage counseling, all sorts of psychology, of course, as well. But I would think that, the spy and law enforcement industries and political machines would be very interested in utilizing this. Have you been approached? Are those some of your clients in the past? I mean, you were doing something for 40 years to make a living before you wrote a book, or finished the book. So, who were your clients that were, when you say human engineering, I'm not sure everyone knows what human engineering is and who hires someone to be a human engineer and what for. It sounds like something out of, like Kang the Conqueror or Ultron,
Well, basically, as far as my clients, all of them were motivated to self-improvement. All of them. They would come to me with problems, difficulties, upsets, whatever, and I would work with them, and the situations would resolve. They'd feel better. They'd become more able. So these were fairly upscale people, meaning if you were to plot these people on these various scales, most of these people would be at or near the top of many of these scales.
Right.
So, and as I said earlier, if you have somebody, let's say somebody who's in the mafia, he's probably not going to read this book. If he does, he's probably not going to understand it. And even if he does understand it, he's certainly not going to use it because he's about victimizing people. He's not interested in helping anyone. And he's certainly not going to have the insight to help himself. Because if he had that much insight, he wouldn't be in the mafia. He'd be an accountant or a clerk in a bank or something. So this is for people who want to improve themselves, who have some insight to begin with, and who are able to look at facts, look at things. Let me tell you a story that bears on this. I had a friend who doesn't know anything about this, okay? And about 22 years ago, we were just talking about government and politics, the way guys normally do. And I said, wait a minute, let me show you something. This book was in transcript form at that stage. I just pulled out the scale of government, and I handed it to him. I didn't say anything. So he took paper, because we were friends, and he looked at it, and in about 1 second, he pointed. He said, there, I'm right there. He found his level on that scale without my even suggesting that that's what it was for. That's how easy this is to use. And I'll tell you another thing that happens with this all the time. A guy is not thinking about his mother-in-law at all. Not anywhere in his mind. So you give him something. He reads the scales. He has an epiphany about this person without even trying to do that. In other words, it's so obvious that he'll look at it and say, I can see she's down here, and no wonder she gives us a hard time. Or it could be the other way. It could be, well, I realize she's a wonderful person. She's up at this high level.
So if you see the scale and you recognize yourself...
Because his insight has improved.
Sorry, there's a delay. I'm not sure why. But if you recognize yourself, let's just say I see myself on level 3. Is there sort of like a how-to, or are there paragraphs or sections on how to get yourself from 3 to 2 and 2 to 1?
Yes.
Okay.
There's a whole long section in the introduction about how to use it to improve yourself. And then there's a long section about how to use it to improve others.
Gotcha.
And I give specific techniques, specific suggestions. But more important than that is, I spent 25 years developing this to make it foolproof, so that any person who wants to improve himself can do it using this book alone. And the beauty of it is, once you have the book, you don't need anything else. You don't need to spend any money. You don't need to join a club. You don't need to hire a facilitator. You don't need to go to a therapist. You don't need any of that. It's just you and the book. Now, of course, the smarter you are, the more you understand it, the more literate you are to understand the words being used, the more benefit you're going to have from it. But, as I said, it's kind of a self-perpetuating thing, because once you learn how to use scale A, you're then going to say, wait a minute, let me look at scale B. And your ability to use scale B will have been improved because of your experience with scale A.
Yeah.
So by the time you get to the end of the book, it's getting easier. There's a general facility that develops as you use the book.
So the order matters.
Yes, because this is about specific persons. Every person is unique. The reason that I had so much success is that I was cognizant that that client was unique. There's nobody in the universe like that client, and I was interested in what he had to say. Whether it was correct or not, I was interested. So you use this, you tailor it. In other words, some guys will look at the scale of spiritual identity and say, I don't care about this. Okay, fine, there's 34 more scales.
Right.
So you go to the scale of attack. Where are you on this scale? And so, or where is your roommate, or your girlfriend, or your next door neighbor, or whatever? You can spot people. And the more you do this, the more you will want to do it, because it helps. I meet people all the time that I can spot, not only in 3 dimensions, but on the internet. I can spot on these levels, and I know exactly who we're dealing with. And I never tell them. It's my information, and I use it for myself.
Understood.
If somebody else wants to get the book and figure out what level I'm at, I can't stop them.
You said a few times that if you read English, so I take it this book's only in English, but can someone translate it? Would it translate the same way in any language?
No. The hardest thing about this was expressing it in a way that makes sense to people. I cringe at the thought that somebody is going to translate this. Now, translating it into a language that's similar to English, like French, there's a lot of similarity, or even German, okay, that might not be so bad. But translating this into Finnish, which is a totally unique language, or Chinese has many different languages. Wow. I mean, I don't even want to think about that.
Right. Okay.
So the good news is that English is the most widely spoken language on earth now, and especially in industrialized society, and especially amongst the more upscale people. I mean, if you find somebody who lives in Africa in some little village that doesn't know English, that person is living a very sort of primitive life. So this book is not going to work for him. But the good news is 1.5 billion people can speak English. And I'm sure at least 1 billion of them could read this book.
Okay.
Now, if you know anything about nonfiction books, 10,000 is considered a hit.
Right.
And we're talking about 1 billion people.
Okay. Very good. And the book, where can they buy it?
It's very easy to find. Of course, it's available on Amazon and Barnes & Nobles and all the other places. But if you just type the word Septemics, Septemics, into a search engine, you'll get hundreds of responses, including all the people who are selling the book. So it's easy to find. But I want to say this.
Sure.
I invite your listeners to go to Septemics.com, where you can read what many readers have said about it, what many journalists have written about it, what the reviews are. You can read sections of the book itself. And in fact, there's a 15-minute pre-recorded lecture by me where I explain it in a basic way to a new person. By the time somebody goes through all of that, he's probably going to want to buy it.
Excellent. Well, I've looked at the site. I probably should have listened to the recorded section ahead of time, but obviously I didn't. So no big startling confession there. But I did read some, but I should have listened to the recorded section.
Yeah.
Okay. Any last words that you want to
I want to say one thing in closing. Right. The data in this book are vital for every human being and can help you to achieve your goals faster and easier by explaining what might otherwise seem to be inexplicable or random. If someone were to invite you to a rendezvous, you would certainly expect me to tell you the date, the time, the location, and perhaps also how to get there. Needless to say, it's very difficult to get somewhere if, you don't know where you are.
Right.
Start off. B, you don't know what the destination is. And C, you don't know how to get there. Now, this sounds idiotic, but most people do this regularly. Most people, in most situations, do not know where they are, do not know where they're going, and do not know how to get there. Each of these scales tells you when you find your level where you are. And the next level up is where you will go if you succeed. You see, if you're at level 4, if you try, will get to level 3. If you try to get to level 1 or 2, you will fail because it's too steep a gradient. So I have solved the gradient problem. I'm giving you the gradients across 35 axes. This is how to advance yourself up these gradients because I have them in the correct order. And so you find your level, and once you do that, see if you're honest with yourself. I'm not saying you have to tell anybody. You might not want to do that. You find your level, and then you know the next level up is what you should be shooting for. And you will be able to do that.
I don't know if you're going to do this or not, but who is out there that's famous and prominent, that is a secret hero, and who is a secret villain that we should know about?
Of mine?
That you've been able to grade or measure.
Well, there are plenty of people. First of all, I admire greatly, like Plato and Aristotle and Seneca and Cicero. All those people, of course, I have a high opinion of, and I study them, and they help me. As far as living people, there's some very upscale people. I mentioned Jordan Peterson, Elon Musk. If you look at what he's accomplished, and if you find out about him, what he had to go through to get to where he is. I mean, those are obviously people of heroic proportions. And again, I'm not going to give you any levels, but you can read the book and figure it out yourself what levels they're at. As far as the villains, I mean, Adolf Hitler was at level 7 on the scale of basic purposes. His basic purpose was to destroy. Now, most people might say, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. And the reason it doesn't make any sense is most people are not that crazy.
Right.
But if you study Hitler, it's clear that he was an inherently destructive person. He not only destroyed the Allies, he destroyed the Wehrmacht. He destroyed the Jews, and he destroyed Germany. I mean, he destroyed his own relatives. So he was an inherently destructive person. Fortunately, there aren't too many people like that. But if you read the chapter, this particular chapter, which is on my website, he's at that level. So, he's a true villain. Now, what's frightening is that these villainous people fool people. They fool people. They deceive people.
Right.
And this is something you can figure out if you read the book, that the upscale people are very candid, ingenuous people, like Einstein. Einstein was level 1 on the scale of human ability. He was a genius, on that scale. He was a very nice, friendly, warm person, honest person, And that's what you find in upscale people. Those are their traits. Now, of course, most people are high in some scales and low in other scales. And that makes this book extremely valuable. Because you might have a friend who has $1 billion, owns his own corporation, drives a Bugatti, flies around in his own Learjet, but can't get a relationship going with a woman that's fulfilling for him, right? And so you can help him by showing him the scale. This is a person who's high on one scale, low on another scale. And most of us are.
That makes sense. So this can help you determine the difference, not to be too literal, but between the false prophets and the prophets. But it's mostly for yourself, for your own self-development, and helping those around you to and sort of spreading it. It's almost like multi-level marketing without marketing.
Right, because I already know and can absolutely guarantee anyone who reads this book and understands it will necessarily help the people around him.
Okay.
I'll give you an example.
Okay.
Right, let's say a guy gets the book, he reads it, right? And he's got a son. He sees his son's having trouble in school. Well, there's a scale of scholarship. He says, Sonny, come over here, let me show you something. The kid knows he's having trouble in school. So look at the scale of scholarship. Well, the kid's a scholar, so he's going to be interested. Okay? You might have him read the glossary. And he might say, where are you on this scale? Okay? And he might not find it right away, but he'll probably get a bracket. He'll probably say, well, I know I'm not near the top. I'm down near the bottom sometimes. Okay, good. Read the chapter. And then see if you can spot where. And the kid will do that. You might want to help them, and they'll say, well, I can see I'm at level 5. That's not so great. No wonder I have trouble with school. And then you can say, well, let's move you up to level 4. And if you follow the instructions in that chapter, I tell you with specificity how to make someone a better scholar. Just follow the instructions there. It might take some time, and eventually you'll move him up to level 4, and he will be beholden to you for helping him.
All right. Well, it does sound like almost
so
like
that's what happens with this book.
Yeah.
People get it.
Yeah, that's fine. It sounds like it's almost too good to be true, but as you said, you've studied it, and it's science, and so I guess the only way I know the only way to verify for yourself is to try it for yourself, and then to try it with others. So you've heard where you can find and purchase the book. You've heard where you can sample it before you make that investment of $10, which is probably less than whatever system that you're using to hear this podcast on. You have anything in closing for us, Mr. Marshall?
Well, I've had a lifetime in education, and as a result of that, I learned how to teach people. And so I was very careful in this book to write in a way that people would get. In other words, I anticipated the problem the person might have in understanding this and clarified it. That's why I worked on the book for 25 years, because I want people to benefit from this. Your success is my reward. That's what I'm about.
Excellent. All right. Well, I can't think of a better way to conclude than that. Thank you very much for joining us, folks. It is Septemics, Septemics, and go to septemics.com, and you'll get all the information that you need to explore further. Thank you again to Jim Marshall for being our guest, and thank you all for listening, and you'll hear from us next time. And this will, in fact, be a Garden Views, probably on something where I'll do probably a self-help week or self-help month with a series of shows that are at least similar in nature, but probably in very different disciplines. Okay. Well, thank you very much, everyone, and thanks again to the guest.
Okay, remember what I told you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, sir. And
get up and dance. Level up.
Level up, 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 level up. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Level up, 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 level up. All this on me so yummy, all this sauce so yummy. No, you want this yummy, yummy all in your tummy. Level up, 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 level up. So yummy, all this sauce so yummy. No, you want this yummy, yummy all in your tummy. Them old mistakes are gone, I won't do them no more. That's old news, that's new news, I done did that before. I turn nothing to something, my comeback on 100. Let's talk it, more action, you just gon' see coming. I just keep elevating, no losses, just upgrading. My lessons made blessings, I turn that into money. They gotta never settle, this view is so much better. I'm chilling, I'm winning, like on another level. Oh, you can talk all you want. See me as a prayer, nothing I'm afraid of, and I can have it all. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Level up, 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 level up. All this on me so yummy, all this sauce so yummy. No, you want this yummy, yummy all in your tummy. Level up, 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 level up. All this on me so yummy, all this sauce so yummy. No, you want this yummy, yummy all in your tummy. They freeze get dropped like weight. Team love don't want no hate. I'm grinding, I'm shining, up, I'm on my way. They gotta never settle. This view is so much better. I'm chilling, I'm winning, like on another level. Oh, you can talk all you want. See me as a prayer, nothing I'm afraid of, and I can have it all. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Level up, 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 level up. All this on me so yummy, all this sauce so yummy. No, you want this yummy, yummy all in your tummy. All this sauce so level, on another level, elevate your level, level, graduate your level. There's no one on it, nah. Hey, level up, 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 level up. All this on me so yummy, all this sauce so yummy. No, you want this yummy, yummy all in your tummy. Level up, 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 level up. All this on me so yummy.